Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 142 of Radio 815, the podcast dedicated to examining the works of writer, director, producer J.J. Abrams and his extended Bad Robot universe. I'm Matt Crandall, here with Marcelo Inostroza, as we continue to talk about the J.J. Abrams produced miniseries 11/22/63. Today we are talking about the fifth episode entitled The Truth, directed by star James Franco, written by Bridget Carpenter, who is the main showrunner of this thing. Obviously, we've been talking about how this is King and Abrams' first get-together. They would again later do Castle Rock. And as The Truth unfolded, early on, we get a scene of Jake Epping, played by James Franco, who at the time when this aired, back in March of 2016, was just movie star doing a TV show James Franco. And now as we sit here in 2023, he is canceled sexual pervert James Franco. And early in this episode, he gets fired from his job and gets a lecture because of his moral clause and his sexual impropriety. Marcelo, how fucking distracting was that to watch an episode that James Franco himself directed, echoing what must have been a real life conversation that happened to James Franco at some point after they made this show.
Yeah, that was really disturbing. But but the whole thing, the whole thing about this show is that I really don't like I've said before in previous weeks. This show has a focus problem. Jake is in the past to try and prevent the assassination of JFK, to hopefully make his present day world a better world. But he keeps getting bogged down by people in the past, most notably Sadie, and he keeps putting off the primary reason why he's there, and that just fucking pisses me off. If you want to, if you want to work Sadie into the plot, sure, work her into the plot, deal with her character stuff, but then take Sadie and bring her on the grander adventure of trying to find out what led up to Candy's assassination. And oh, it just was so fucking frustrating because this episode feels like a giant fucking detour. And what Jake does in this episode, he leaves fucking poor Bill to find out if Oswald was the trigger man behind the attempted assassination of General Walker, and fucking Bill doesn't even see shit because the past makes him see his dead sister. So everything that they set up with that plot in this episode was for nothing.
And what's frustrating is there's a great opportunity that Jake could have brought Sadie into the fold at the start, because last episode ended where she found the Russian recordings of Oswald and his wife talking and doing it, and she's kind of disturbed because she's like, why is Jake recording this Russian stuff and what's going on here? And she's like, everything you say is a lie, and she doesn't want to hear anything. But also, Jake doesn't try and explain anything. This guy gave so little effort to try and convince her of anything in that moment that I was really frustrated. He's like, oh, hey, but what? And I'm like, throughout this episode, I've mentioned it before previous that, like, I feel it's very unique for us, a show, to give us a hero who's a complete fucking idiot. And throughout this episode, Jake keeps being in situations that there are easy fixes for, and he refuses to do anything. And this was one of those things where I'm like, I kept thinking, even if Forrest Gump was in these situations, he would be able to talk his way out and fix it more than this character can, which that character was supposed to be, a guy with actual issues, and this guy's supposed to just be a normal guy, but he's so dim that he doesn't ever do anything that makes any lick of sense. And so he doesn't try and tell her, you're right, I have been lying, and it's because I have this big secret, and come back and I will explain it to you calmly. And we can go to a public place and I can tell you about it, like, because I know you're freaked out. But instead, he's just like, why are you mad at me, baby? Oh, come on, baby, don't be mad at me. And then she drives away, and he goes in, and he sees the casserole in a dish, and he throws it right in the garbage. I'm pretty sure Sadie's coming back for that casserole dish at some point. Like, dude, I just give me back my stuff. And he tosses it in the garbage. I just, so much of this was like, what in the absolute hell? And I was expecting that shadowy figure that we got a glimpse of last week, Yellow Card Man, to maybe come back shortly after this all goes down. But he's nowhere to be seen. And the next scene picks up with Deke having to fire Jake because of his morality clause. How are you feeling that Jake is doing with explaining himself and explaining his actions? Because he keeps getting into situations that from the outside look real bad. And when people confront him about this, his responses are not satisfactory.
No, I think that if he was in our time period today, he wouldn't get away with these non-satisfactory answers. I think that the fact that he's dealing with people from the 60s, I think that makes his dumbness less of an issue for him. But you are absolutely right. I mean, I don't mean to jump around here, but that's what we do here on the show. Eventually, Sadie's sexual deviant husband plans this whole elaborate trap for Jake and Sadie, in which he wants Jake to drink some drain cleaner so he'll die, right? And essentially, what happens is Jake kills him, right? Kills him with a poker thing. And I'm going, okay, so this is the second person that Jake has killed, and I'll bet you $1 that nothing is going to happen. And guess what? Nothing happens. When he leaves the building, somehow out of fucking nowhere, Art Mullen from Justified, the principal guy, shows up and talks Jake out of giving a statement to a police officer that went to the high school that Jake just got fired from, Jody. And I'm like, what the how in the holy fuck did this principal guy just... It doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Here, I will figure out a better way to fix that. All right. Instead of Jake coming out of the building, talking to the police officer, having the principal show up, why doesn't Jake grab Sadie, get in the car, clean her up with something, right? And the next scene that we see is Jake Sadie driving up to where Bill is surveilling the potential assassination of Senator Walker that is maybe done by Oswald, right? And have Jake bring Sadie up to what is finally happening in the car. Well, this is actually happening. Instead of doing what they did, because they spent half the episode in a hospital wondering if Sadie is going to be okay or not. Okay? And look, listen, I don't mean to disparage the people who made this show, because making television is extremely hard and writing is extremely hard. So I'm not coming at this as to be I could do a better job. I probably couldn't. But there is a way to tell this story that is much more streamlined, and you could take elements of the story that are important to Jake and insert them in a better place to make more fucking sense. And every time Jake does something unbelievably evil or unbelievably hard to get out of, like killing someone, put that into the story. Have him get locked up or something, right?
Yeah, but even, and I am going to backtrack in a minute because I got to spend a lot of time on this whole fucking Johnny storyline, but it's super sus that the guy's like, I need a statement. And literally all Jake has to do is say, we were here, this guy held us hostage, then we got a chance to attack him, I hit him, she shot him, he's dead. In the middle of this, 2 teens from our school showed up, I told them to call the cops, verify with them that that's what happened, I gotta go to the hospital now. But he doesn't do that. He's like, I can't talk to you, guy, I can't even think of talking to you because my girlfriend. And it's like, it literally would only take you a minute and a half to give a statement, and then nobody would give a fuck. You wouldn't look like some criminal who's trying to flee the scene. And like later he gives a statement, and I'm like, why didn't he just give the statement there instead of having Deke somehow postpone the statement, which makes no sense because it doesn't make me think he loves Sadie anymore because he can't ride with her anyway. And obviously, when they get to the hospital, there's going to be a bunch of red tape he's got to cut through. So, like, just give the statement, asshole. You're looking like a complete idiot. You're painting a target on you when this was a legitimate murder, self defense, but the way you're acting is not copacetic. Like, think of where you are when you are and try and blend in and not draw attention to yourself. And the easiest way is giving the goddamn statement that's only going to take 2 minutes and then getting the fuck out of there. But so earlier in this episode, they start to figure out this plan because they've got to make sure that when General Walker is almost assassinated, they need to make sure that it was Lee Harvey Oswald who pulled the trigger. And if it is, then they know that he is going to be the guy to go after Kennedy and they can take him out. And the only smart moment of this whole episode is where they are like surveilling this church and getting everything, and they're like, well, if the changing timeline tries to fuck with us, let's make sure we got backups. So we got spare tires, we got spark plugs, all this stuff that we're getting ready. But the one thing they don't think of is, what if one of us has to go away? Is the other guy that we're leaving to finish the job a complete emotional basket case who's not going to be able to finish the fucking information that we need? And is he going to get distracted at the last moment? And I'm screaming at the TV as this is all happening. What are you thinking as this is a moment where we're supposed to think like Jake has finally thought everything through, but then obviously everything goes to shit real quick?
Yeah, I was super happy to see that Jake and Bill had a plan and they accounted for the past fucking with them. Like they had spark plugs, they had extra everything in the car. Everything was set to go. But the minute that Jake showed up at the house that he had in Jody, and he was collecting his stuff, and the phone rings, and he was just about to walk out. I was like, motherfucker, just walk out, just walk out, just walk out. Don't answer. But I'm like, the second he answered that phone, and we hear we hear Sadie's ex-husband on the other end of the line. I'm like, fuck, don't you do it, don't you do it. And then the next thing is him calling Bill and telling him he cannot be there. And the next thing you see is him running down the street. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? How in the fucking hell do you think that this is a good idea? First of all, this is your mission. This has nothing to do with Bill. Bill fell into this because he caught you in the fucking bushes. I couldn't believe Jake Epping's ineptitude of giving his mission to Bill. At this point, I'm like, what are your priorities here? Do you actually want to do this, or do you care more about Sadie than changing your future and our future? What do you actually care about? Because I'm like, man, this isn't it. It's not it.
It's definitely not it. And he, again, gets called away right before a big moment, and he's leaving it in the hands of Bill, who's hung up on Marina and is not focused and is not thinking straight. And so I hate everything that goes on with that. And when Bill goes up to the apartment and he has his interaction with Oswald and he almost gives the game away because he's so inept. And I'm like, dude, this is the day. This is the day you guys have been waiting for years. So, like, how about we don't have a smoke with the guy's wife and then knock on the door and almost fuck everything up when for 3 years that you and Jake have been hanging out, this is the day you have been waiting for to make sure that this was the guy. So everybody should be on high alert. We should not be interacting with any of them. And it just doesn't make any goddamn sense. And what doesn't also make any goddamn sense, I enjoy T.R. Knight as an actor, but holy shit is this dude miscast, because there are so many times in the scene where Jake is being held hostage that Jake could easily get the upper hand and he could easily take Johnny out, and he does not. And it makes no sense when you got TR Knight, this little guy, being the one who's doing this. If they had cast the dude who's currently playing Jack Reacher as Johnny, the ex-husband, I would understand why Jake doesn't do anything. But when Johnny's got the gun, and there's a bunch of times where he's like waving the gun around, and I'm like, he's waving it around. He's not holding it proper. You can grab his hand and pull the trigger and shoot him right in the face at any moment. There's a part where he gets really close to Jake and he leans into him, and they're both looking at Sadie, and the gun is just hanging down. And I'm like, well, he's looking at Sadie. He's not even looking at what you're doing, Jake. You could just aim that gun at him and pull the trigger and he's dead. And even then, when Johnny gives him a cup of bleach, and he's holding a cup of bleach and he's like, drink that. Well, that's when I'm thinking, no, throw it in his face. But it takes 5 minutes before Jake realizes he can throw it in his face. And they try and do this whole bullshit with this apple bowl, and he smashes it on the floor. And I'm like, why did you smash it on the floor? Smash it over this motherfucker's head. He's such a small little guy. You're going to kill him with it. And he won't have time to shoot because he's waving this gun around. There's a part where he tucks the gun under his elbow as he's pouring the bleach. And I'm like, just grab that big heavy glass bowl and smash it over his face. There was so many times in that scene where James Franco could have overpowered TR Knight that it made absolutely no sense. TR Knight is good casting as the creepy guy who's into some weird sexual fetish with clothes pegs, but he is not good casting for the guy who's going to hold 2 people hostage for an entire afternoon. Because like I said, if they had gotten the dude who plays Jack Reacher, Alan Richardson, to be this guy, I would be like, yeah, James Franco is fucked. He can't do anything because if he tries to make a move, this guy's going to snap him in half like a twig. But that is not who they cast. It makes no fucking sense. And this is like a 15-minute sequence that I'm just like, God damn it. Like, my dead grandmother could have found her way out of this situation quicker than Jake did. It blew my fucking mind.
Yeah, look. The one thing that I thought about this sequence is I kept thinking, good God, man. Well, because the way that Sadie's ex-husband was acting was like, this guy is clearly is clearly not rational. He's smaller than you, Jake, and he's out of his fucking mind. So why don't you just stand up, bum rush him? I don't give a shit where the gun is. Bum rush him and knock him the fuck out, right? Or listen, a way to fix this scene is if Sadie's husband actually handcuffed Jake to like a fucking radiator and had him on the ground so Jake couldn't move, right?
Yeah, that would have made sense.
That would, yeah, that would have been, that would have been a way to fix the scene problems, the problems with the scene. Also, the speech that Sadie's husband gives, I'm like, that's not very good. It's like he just kept babbling on about about you stole my wife and she's a filthy what, and I'm like, I don't care. I just don't care. But everything that you said, from the way that he holds his gun, from the bowl on the table, from Sadie breaking the bowl, from Jake dragging a piece of glass with his shoe, I'm like, okay, you got the piece of glass under your shoe. What are you gonna do? Like, you're like gonna go under the table, grab the glass, and put it in his neck? But he doesn't even do that. He kills him with a fucking poker, like I said 20 minutes ago.
Well, what's so funny is that he's trying to get that shard of glass, and then the doorbell rings, and he's like, oh, shoot, the doorbell, I can't do it now. And it's like, the doorbell was the perfect moment. The guy's distracted because the doorbell rang, throw the bleach in his face, grab the shard, and slit his throat. But instead, we have another 5 minutes of, finally he tosses the bleach into his face after the kids are at the door. But even when he does that, then he doesn't wrestle the gun out of his hand right away. He lets the guy take a bunch of shots at them. And I'm like, this character is a puss. This dude is doing nothing. The guy can't see. Just get up and get him. So finally I was like, God damn it. Finally, thank God, when he hit him with the poker and then when Sadie shot him. But I was like, this should have been over and done with 10 minutes ago. We should have threw bleach in this guy, slit his throat, or just wrestled the gun away from him, and we could have overpowered him and blown his brains out. And it it just made me really frustrated. And then when we're cutting back to Bill not doing what he's supposed to be doing, it's just making me furious because I'm like, this is like, we got two people who are trying to stop the assassination of JFK, and they're fucking Harry and Lloyd from Dumb and Dumber. And it's like, that's not who should be the stars of our conspiracy thriller shows. We want people who are capable and competent.
I keep thinking to myself, like, I mean, James Franco does have some blame to take because if I'm not mistaken, he's an executive producer and he's the lead actor of the show. But I'm like, it's got to be the writing because I'm like, the writing doesn't make fucking sense. It just doesn't. I mean, I don't know who said it last week, whether it was you or I. One of us said that this whole series would have been better as a movie, like a 2 hour movie or a 1 hour and 30 minute movie would have been great. But making this into a series with the type of storytelling techniques and what they're doing with the story and the way that they're sidestepping the main reason why Jake is there, it just fucking pisses me off. And another thing, what did you think about the Chris Cooper flashback when Jake's sitting in the hospital and he's remembering Al talking to him and he says, the one thing you don't want to do is get too attached to people in the past, because if you do, you're going to forget why you're there in the first place. And I'm like, no shit. You forgot that like what? 3 episodes ago.
Yeah, it's frustrating because, yeah, he has really forgotten it. And there's also, we cut to back when Jake was teaching and he hypothetically asked his class, what would you do if you could travel in time? And they're like, kill Hitler, ha. And then they're like, oh, we'd kill Homer so we wouldn't write this book that we're reading, ha. And it's like, I don't know the point of those flashbacks because Jake is not remembering any of this to take any of this stuff to heart. So, like, it's weird that we're putting that in there to remind us how bad of a job the dude is doing on focusing on his mission. So that was kind of crazy. And, of course, when he leaves it up to Bill, who has been screwing up, he's hanging out with Oswald and Oswald's wife when he's not supposed to be. Oswald gives him a book of Marxist rhetoric, and he's like, oh, any good? And the guy's like, how do you like the truth? And I'm like, ugh, okay, here we go. And so at the big moment, because Jake is at the hospital with Sadie after he's dodged the cop, Bill has one job. Bill has one job. See if it's Oswald who fires the shot. But he gets distracted because he thinks he sees his sister, who they never found the body, but she looks exactly as she would have looked 12 years ago, which would be a big red flag. And then she disappears. And so, like, we're supposed to sort of assume that this is, can the past fucking with you make you see things that aren't really there? Is that part of the power of the past will fuck back? I think that's kind of supernatural and strange. But then Bill realizes, like, as he hears a shot, like, oh, this isn't my sister. It never would have been because she's probably dead. Why did I fall for this? And that's what I'm thinking. Why did you fall for this? You had one job. How? What are you thinking as Bill gets distracted by seeing his missing / dead sister and runs after her instead of doing the one thing that we have literally been counting on for the last 3 years?
Listen, at that point, I had lost all hope, but I'm like, good God, man, look, Bill is like, he's like a child without supervision, right? Because like you said, all he had to do was understand that his sister is dead, and no matter what he sees, that is not his sister. And he's already been told by Jake that the past messes with your mind. So when he saw that young woman step out of the church and her face got all funny, shouldn't that have been an indication to Bill, oh, that this is what Jake was talking about? So I shouldn't go over there because the whole reason why I'm here is to see if Oswald pulled the trigger on the senator, and if I go run off in the other direction, we're gonna be fucked. And I'm like, what are you doing? But look, in Bill's defense, I do understand the temptation of wanting to see a loved one so bad, and doing something so impulsive. But putting that aside, Bill's behavior in this moment is just asinine. It's just ridiculous. And I believe you said it last week or a couple weeks ago that Bill was a creation of or Bill had a small part in the book, and Bill's character got expanded in the series. I really wish that Bill wasn't in the series, that it was just Jake, because
And I think Jake wishes the same after Bill fucks up because how it's so disheartening that I'm like, okay, well, I knew something was going to have to go on, that like they can't just wrap this all up before we get to 11/22/63 because we are not quite there yet. We're in the summer or whatever it is at this point. But so they go to the hospital. Jake is questioned by the cops, and he finally gives his statement, which he could have gave earlier, but for some reason put it off. And he says, you know, this is what happened. And the cop's like, okay. And the cop's like, ask him a few more questions. He's like, the guy deserved to die. Get off my back. I was happy that I cracked him over the skull and I'd do it again. And then the cop's like, yeah, I believe you. It's all good. And I'm like, again, things you don't say to a cop 101 when he's like, if it's self-defense, just explain that it was self-defense. And like, it's showing us shades of Jake and how he's, you know, justifying if somebody deserves and the world's going to be a better place, then it's fine to murder, which when you start doing that, eventually you can cross the line and you can become the thing you're trying to stop, which happens to a lot of people. So I'm starting to wonder, is that where we're heading with Jake? Is Jake the guy who kills Kennedy? Is this going to be like some fucking twist where like he's the trigger man, and if he had not even come back, then nothing would have happened? I'm starting to wonder if they're going to pull some weird bullshit like that as we go on. And then he calls Bill, and he gets the bad news, and Bill's like a blubbering mess, like, I'm a dum-dum. And he totally is, and Jake just leaves the phone hanging, and he's like, oh, I fucked up. I guess I put this in the hands of a moron, and I'm a moron for trusting the moron. And I'm like, yeah, you're both fucking morons. Let's get on with it. And then, you know, I haven't loved the writing of this episode at all, but we get the worst fake out. The worst. Like, just hack bullshit writing where the doctor comes to find Jake. And this doctor is played by Christian Brun, a Canadian actor who was on Orphan Black, and he pops up in a bunch of other shows, but you can tell if Christian Brun is in it, this thing was shot in Toronto or somewhere. So he comes as the doctor, and he's like, oh, did anybody come and tell you? And Jake's like, tell me what? He's like, we couldn't do as much as I thought we could do. I'm so sorry. It was out of our hands. And Jake's like, oh my God, she's dead? And he's like, no, she's not dead. She's perfectly fine. Just, we couldn't really heal the scar. Well, you couldn't heal the scar instantly? This just happened 4 hours ago. Of course you couldn't heal the scar. You got to stitch it up, and we'll worry about healing the scar later. A doctor would never come find you and go, oh, I thought we could do... Like, I was just screaming at this point. I was like, this was just to fake out the audience and for us to think for 30 seconds that Sadie was dead. And for Jake to get a jolt, for him to then confess that he loves Sadie, and to realize he has to tell her the truth. But the way it was handled was some real hack shit. It was schmuck bait. What are you thinking, Marcelo, as this doctor has the worst phrasing in the world?
yeah, I did not like that at all. And look, my one justification for him acting the way he did, which again, I just want to be clear, there's no justification for speaking to a patient that way, speaking to a family member or a loved one of a patient that way. You don't do that, even if it's in the 60s. In the 60s, they still had that thing of of beauty, right? They really didn't they really looked down on people who were different and people who were mentally scarred, right? So maybe that's why he acted like she was dead, because they couldn't fix the fucking scar on her face, and now he might be thinking that, oh, she's gonna be looked at, you're not gonna want to marry her anymore, she's not gonna get a job because she has a fucking scar on her face. And I'm sitting there going, dude, my body is full of scars. Do you think that I give a shit?
Oh my goodness. It just blows my mind that literally, like, it just happened. So there's nothing, even in modern science, there's nothing they can do right away. You got to let that shit kind of heal, and then we can go and try and fix stuff later. So it blew my mind.
Listen, I really hope that with Sadie now knowing that Jake is from the future, I really hope that JD, Sake, and Sadie and Jake. See, this episode is so bad. It's making me forget the character's name. I really hope that with Sadie knowing Jake's true nature now, I really hope that in the remaining episodes they run the game together and they finally focus on the reason why Jake was brought there in the fucking first place. Cause this is this is more than half the series. We're headed downhill.
We are headed downhill as we make our way to the final 3 episodes. Next week on the pod, we will be talking about episode 6, Happy Birthday Lee Harvey Oswald, which I'm sure is going to be a barrel of laughs. So if you are watching along, that is the homework for next week's episode. If you guys want to get in touch with us, you can X us with the hashtag Radio815 or at us at JJUniverse815. If you are looking for the podcast, you can find it on any podcast platform or on YouTube if you prefer. Audio versions are on YouTube, youtube.com/radio815. If you like the show, please like, follow, subscribe, comment, tell a friend. If you love this show, 112263, send us a message. Let us know why you love it and what we have gotten wrong here, specifically what I have gotten wrong here as I'm watching this. So feel free to hit us up. If you want to get in touch with me, don't. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm getting rid of social media for the most part. It is all trash. You can follow me on Letterboxd at MDC3000, and we can log some movies together. Marcelo, if the people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
You can still find me on X or Twitter or whatever the fuck it's called. I'm at CreekFanatic88, but you can also find me on something similar to Letterboxd. It's called TV Time, and I'm at CreekFanatic88. So if you want to come and chat about movies or chat about TV, you can find me in those 2 places.
So that'll do it. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, Radio 815, over and out.
Radio 815 is a Balloonhead Productions presentation in association with Killer Newt Productions.